Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and a little discombobulated this morning because my setup isn't quite correct today. But hopefully, you can see this and join today because I'm excited to be sharing some best practices around AI. And this started because for the last couple times, half dozen times now, I've been presenting, I keep getting asked the same question. And the question that people ask me in these engagements is, uh, how much of this presentation was made by AI? And again, the source of that question is they're curious because there are so many tools available, my beautiful slides, who makes them? Do I use AI to make the slides? Because they're beautiful, they're graphical, lots of illustrations, and I'll show you some of the ways I do that. But people are also asking, like, how are you using AI? How are you? Because I live in it day in day out. I'm writing about it, researching about it. What are the ways that you use AI? So I figured I'd spend the live stream today going through some of my best practices. And so again, I think this is really not so much about also oftentimes how much of this is you, how much of it is AI, and how much can we trust you because you are using AI. So I think it's helpful to be very transparent about how you're using AI. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do that today also as well. So, a couple of things. First of all, I would love for you to share if you are using AI, and also what are your favorite AI hacks and best practices. So please share them if you can. And in particular, I would love for you to share also. And to see the problem today is that I uh, have a presentation that's set up in LinkedIn, but it's not linked to StreamYard today. So I'm getting messages on, hopefully people can find me where I'm streaming here today. Anyways, that's the issue of being live, all the problems and joys of that. So if you are joining today, I would love to hear from you. What are your favorite AI hacks or best practices? How are you using AI? And also, have you run into any problems where you're wondering, like, how transparent should I be about how I use AI? So again, this is a broad discussion around, again, I think we're at a very interesting time in our society where we're moving from a place where we kind of knew how things worked. And now we're not quite sure how to think about the role of AI in the ways that we are incorporating it into our lives and into our work. So let me get into what I want to share today. So a couple of the things that these are the best practices I'm going to be talking about. So first of all, it's just a quick list, but let me get right into it. So I think about prompting as a good best practice. And I also have some slides here where you can get all of these slides. Here you go. So one of the best practices is just being able to use power prompting. And the idea here is that instead of just putting a prompt in there, put some structure behind it. So define the role, because the AI can have the entire world's knowledge in it, and you don't need the entire world's knowledge to do the task. You want it to be a specific area. So I just use an example. I'm preparing to launch a book. I want the AI to help me with my book marketing plan. So I tell it, you're a book marketing expert. So I give it a little bit of information, I define the role, I give it some detailed instructions, and then add some context. You could ask it to use your tone and style, maybe give it some writing samples if you're having it help you draft something, and then be very specific about what you're looking for. And I'll talk about the clarifying questions in just a second, but I think it's really important still that you think about structuring these prompts, because otherwise you're going to get, if you ask a very simple prompt, it's going to give you some very simple answers. And what you really want to do is to make sure that it's actually being very thoughtful and very thorough in the way that it's considering the questions that you're asking. So that's the first thing. It's just to do some power prompting, and it takes a little bit of practice. And if you want more examples, you can go to any of the help sections inside each of the models, and they usually have a guide on how to do prompting well. So great resources out there on how to do really good prompting. But I think there's also some more advanced prompting you can do. So You can stack prompts. So plan ahead that you're going to do a series of prompts. So first one, for example, if you're writing something, instead of just asking it to write, maybe the first prompt you give it is to say, well, write an outline. And then after that, after you've gone through that with it, refined it, then you say, write a first draft. And then let's improve some of the clarity in the flow, maybe add some examples, add storytelling, and then add it to, and maybe give it some samples also to make sure it has your tone and style. So don't expect a great first draft. You wouldn't expect yourself to write a great first draft. So don't ask the AI to do that too as well. The other thing you can do is chain of thought prompting. So if you're looking at a very complex task, break it down. So I'm going to ask you to do some analysis, read through all of these reports, find the things that are commonality to them, do something with that, generate a summary, and fine tune it to be something that I'm going to be interested in, pull out insights from that. So be very specific in the tasks that you want to do and the order that you want to do it in. And then finally, you can also ask it to do some scenario planning with you. Ask it to take different perspectives and really ask it to look at different stakeholders. So you might give it a plan or a presentation and ask it to act like one of your stakeholders. In this case, you might be have a presentation for investors, and you can ask it to be a skeptical investor. What concerns would you want to raise? So having it put on a role again and a perspective and look at things. And I use it constantly as a devil's advocate. If these are all the different audiences I'm trying to serve, how would they look at this? What questions would they have? So again, it's being able to use AI, I think, in these different ways. Think about the ways that you ask the questions. So I think you get better answers when you are asking great questions. So I'm just checking to see if there are any comments on here. I'm not seeing anything right now. And Jay, thank you for sharing the slides. I will also put them in here as well if I can. Here we go. So that's where the slides are at too as well. It's at ai-bit.ly/ai-best practices CLI, just to make it very clear. All right, let me go on and talk about the next best practice, and that is changing your mindset. And the way I like to think about it is you want to treat AI like a very capable, very creative intern, but it is an intern with the entire world's knowledge at its fingertips. But it is not this magical oracle. It doesn't have the answer in it. So if you do it that way, then you're going to treat it in a very different way. So I like to end my prompts with this question. I always ask it the same thing. Uh, ask it before you start, ask me any clarifying questions you may have. And it changes AI from being this sort of question answer machine to being my thought partner. So I'm asking a question. I'm asking it to ask me questions in the same way that you wouldn't give a creative intern an assignment and just ask it to go off and do the task. At the end of the request, you would say, do you have any questions for me? And they usually do. And those questions help me deepen my thinking, help me explain better. So instead of having to put everything into that first prompt, you have the ability to have a conversation. So I think about it as not so much prompt engineering as conversation engineering. How can you set up the AI to have the best conversation with it and treat it like the partner that it really could be? I might ask AI to interview me, for example, for an article or a social post, because I'm kind of not sure what questions to ask it because I'm still thinking through the process. So I'll ask it, here's the topic I want to talk about. I want to write an article about this. I want you to help me brainstorm it. Ask me a bunch of questions to help me think through this particular issue. I might ask it to have some divergent thinking. How about what are some unconventional approaches that I might have overlooked? And then also as a strategic collaborator, here is my business challenge. I may be having a tough conversation I have to have, or here's my business plan. Provide a SWOT, give me feedback, suggest approaches. So help me think through these particular problems. Again, using AI as a thought partner. So I see people are training. I'm glad you all found the stream here today. And Jay, thank you for sharing the link. And also, I think you really appreciate this before you start asking any clarifying questions you may have. Jay, I have to admit, I use this so much. I have this as a text, as a shortcut on my keyboard. I use Text Blast, Blaze, to just have some keyboard shortcuts, and I have a bunch of prompts that I use over and over again, and that's one of them. So I just type in slash clarify and it types in that sentence. So very super helpful. All right. I also have this comment from Jay Johnson. LLM strategic advantage is its inductive reasoning, which you can validate with its link to verifiable data. Perplexity does this while some of the other engines, Google, Microsoft, etc. So I think it's very helpful. Again, the fact that it has all of that knowledge and you can see the source materials and check it because it's not always right. So I say trust but verify. So I'm constantly verifying, especially if it's something where it's fact-based. Is it real? Does it exist? Giving the citations. So even if it doesn't give me the citations, for example, ChatGPT and Claude don't necessarily do that. So I go and ask it, well, give me the sources that you cited. Find me examples that back this up. So again, it's a conversation in the same way that if an intern came back to me with a bunch of research, I'm like, great, show me your research, show me your work. Give me the citation so we can both verify that. I just want to be able to see that. So great point about that. All right, let me go on to the next best practice. One thing I do constantly is to write proposals. So I have clients, I have speaking engagements, and so I realized that I have some of the old text again. I was in a bit of a rush this morning. Let me see if I have it on the next slide. Here we go. Here's the right slide. So what I'll do is I'll upload a transcript of the scoping call. So I will take a call, I record it with the person's permission, the client's permission, and then I will upload it and I will give it another example of a proposal or a couple of them. And then you can see here that the prompt, you'll be creating a proposal for the client. They requested for their upcoming leadership team offsite. Here's a transcript. And then I'm asking it to write a proposal with two options. I'm being very specific here. I'm giving it a past proposal that is similar to it. I'm adding specifics to this. And at the end of the proposal, I also asked it to write and draft me an email that I could send to the client because it has the full context. So this turned a pretty tedious task of proposal writing into this really fun collaborative task that I have with an AI that can take everything that I just talked about with the client and within a few minutes have a proposal ready to go. So I find this to be just a great productivity hack. And also it really captures in the words, in the voice of the client, the situation, the problem. And I'm authentic to that because it's captured directly from the transcript into the proposal. So I think AI does a much better job of capturing that information and helping me think through the proposal than if I were to spend laboriously an hour or two writing that proposal together. All right, let me see if there's any other comments. All right, let me keep going. The other thing I do is to use the same prompt with multiple models. And the reason I do this is the models are constantly changing. And I have my favorite models to do certain things. For example, I love using Claude for writing because I find it to be very creative, very lyrical. It really understands my style. So if I really need to just kind of like give my writing a bit of a juice, I'll give it something and I'll ask it to like juice it up, like make it better. Take this thing that I've written and make it even better. So edit it, add to it. And it just gives me, it understands my voice so well and just gives me a little bit of an extra push. I like Gemini because it has this huge context window. So I can give it tons of information and it'll make sense of it. And ChatGPT just knows me really well. It's sort of my go-to Swiss Army knife. And because I use it so much, as a foundational tool, it understands me pretty well. So what I do is I put in a prompt and I ask it, for example, that prompt, ask me any clarifying questions you have. And I put it into all these engines. You can see them all lined up here of ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. I threw in Meta. I have DeepSeek in there, Perplexity. I sometimes throw Grok in. Again, I'll use a couple of them, not all of these, but just as an example. And I'll just pull you up I asked it that book launch plan, and I asked it to ask me questions, and they each asked a different question that was unique to that engine that no one else asked. So ChatGPT, because it knows me fairly well, that I have a lot of channels, it asks, what channels are you planning to use? Claude is asking me, because it also knows me quite a bit, like, what are your goals? Are you trying to make this book a bestseller? Are you trying to use it to drive speaking? Gemini asked me about, how do you want your personal brand or tone to come across in your marketing efforts? What does that look like? DeepSeek asked me, do you have any pre-launch assets we can take a look at? And Perplexity asked me, you have probably written previous books, so it kind of knows who I am because I put my name in. What worked and didn't work with your previous book launches, which is a really good question. So I love this because across the engines, I can just pick one, for example, to use because it's asking me the best questions. And so it's demonstrating that it understands the particular problem that I'm working on at that particular moment. But I also like looking at the questions because all of these are great points to have in my conversation with whichever model that I decide to use. These are all great points that I should put into the conversation I have with the model around my book launch ideas. So again, it's almost like having a multi-sided expert from all of these models being put together. And sometimes I'll take all of these things, add them all together. Don't even try to filter them. I'll just take all the questions and be very transparent. I'll pick one of the models and like, these are all the other questions that all the other models have asked me, consolidate them and ask me all the questions all at once. So it just helps to have those different perspectives and ways of thinking all put together into one place. All right, let me check and see if there are any other comments here. All right, I think we're good for now. All right, I think I already did some of these things. All right, did that, did that. All right, here we go. The next one is looking at um, asking AI for feedback and for coaching. So I will, again, as you have heard, I do a lot of calls and I want to constantly improve. So I will oftentimes take a transcript of my call and ask AI for feedback on how I can improve. So I did this recently with a conversation I had with someone, and I had recorded it in AI in Otter.ai, my transcription tool. And Otter very conveniently has this AI chat built into it. So I can just go and ask it, what did I do well? Where are areas I can improve? And you can see here from the transcript, it gives me a couple of ways to improve. I mentioned I'm really focused on the book. And I said, one of the things I did not give concrete follow through. I said, these are some ideas, some things we could do, but I didn't give concrete ways of how I was going to follow through. So it gave me some coaching to say, next time, make sure you do that. It also said, you guys didn't really have an agenda for this meeting. So have an agenda at the beginning of the meeting next time. Again, just good best practice that I sometimes forget to do because it was a more casual sort of stand-up meeting that I have with somebody. But it said, yeah, you should still have a list of topics you want to talk through. I also use it to help me be a better user of AI. So sometimes I'll ask, based on my last 10 prompts, what patterns do you see? How can I ask better prompts? Or help me develop a learning plan on a topic, XYZ, and allocate 30 minutes a day to doing exercises around it. So these are, again, ways to think about AI getting to know you giving it some information, helping you achieve an objective, and being that facilitator, that coach, giving you feedback. I know that quite a few salespeople will take transcripts from all of their sales calls and just on a weekly basis say, hey, look at all my sales calls. What are areas that I'm working on? They may share their development plan with the AI and say, here's my development plan. How am I doing on it? What are things I need to focus over the next week to help me really develop that plan? How am I doing? And have a weekly check-in with that particular AI coach and ask it for exercises or areas of focus. So again, these are just ways to hopefully give you some ideas of how to use AI in more creative ways. So I want to go down a little deeper now and talk about the presentation aspects of things. So again, one of the things I love using right now is napkin.ai. And this is a little bit hard to see, but I can take some text. So, for example, I've been working I'll just take some text that I'm working on inside of my book or from an article or something or a social post, or throw it in there into a blank canvas, or I'll just give it a prompt. This one, I believe, was just a basic prompt. I was trying to just create a graphic about how synthetic data helps make AI better and how it filters it and how do you create it. And so it just created this beautiful graphic. It uses my colors and style. And my favorite part about this is that it exports it into a PowerPoint, and then I can directly put it into my presentation, but I can also modify. I can move things around. I can resize it. I can change the text. I can change the colors. I can move things that each of the elements are editable inside of PowerPoint. And this is a new feature they added a few weeks ago. So I love using Napkin AI. It is not even close to a talented illustrator, but it is one step definitely above smart art inside of PowerPoint because it keys off of my existing content or prompts around topics that I want to explore. And so, and I also use it as a way to come up with some ideas so that when I do work with an illustrator, that they have some concept of what I'm looking for. And they also can see the text that's associated with that graphic. So I find it to be a really great tool to get some ideas down on paper so that I can work with a professional. So not drafting up a ton of ideas to see what works. I can just scroll through and see all the different options and get sort of again an approximation of what I'm looking at to be able to do that. Again, some other people have used, for example, Leonardo is sharing that Gamma is very good too as well. Agreed. Again, I love Gamma because you can take an entire topic and it'll just create the entire presentation for you. I find that with Gamma, I haven't used it lately, but I found that my ability to control the look and feel and the elements inside of the slides to be more limited. I have a template. I have certain looks and feels. I have existing presentations that I need just a slide for with more detailed illustrations. So that's how I'm using napkin.ai. And I do put every single one of my slides and presentations together from scratch. Again, I'm giving a lot of the same content over and over again. So I reuse some elements, but between Canva for some beautiful pictures and overlays and napkin.ai, I'm usually pulling these things together very quickly. Again, being able to create new presentations and content from scratch very, very quickly. Whereas in the past, I just wouldn't even try to add new content. And I'm constantly creating new content with every single presentation as a result. All right. So let me see. Leonardo is very kindly sharing some of his slides and work that he's been doing with Gamma. So thank you very much for sharing that, Leonardo. I'll definitely go take a look and see what you're doing with it. All right. Let's keep going. I'm watching the time. All right. I still want to cover one very big idea, which is custom models. So prompting is really hard. And especially if you're doing the same tasks over and over again, this is where custom GPTs become so helpful. So I have some instructions in there. So you can get the instructions on how to set up a custom GPT at bit.ly/GPT-instructions. And I updated this about a month ago. The instructions in there are primarily for how to use it for custom GPTs inside of ChatGPT. But I will say that Gemini and Claude also have something very similar. In Gemini, it's called Gems. Inside of Claude, it's called projects. And so, again, they all work very, very similarly. You can give it very custom instructions. You give it, again, you can give it really detailed instructions. But what I love about each of these tools is that you can also upload files. So I have a tool that I use all the time. I created called the Bookwise Editor. It is helping me write the book. I use it to review drafts. I sometimes ask it to do some heavy lifting converting. So, for example, I had um, 3 case studies that I was writing around ethics in the use of AI, and I realized that the cases there was no black and white comes when it comes to AI. And so instead of writing these as best practices, I wanted to change them into scenarios that could help the reader understand how AI could be generating some ethical issues. So instead of laboriously going through and like rewriting it, that I just gave it to AI and like, hey, just turn these instead of best practices into scenarios. And with a push a button, it could do that. But it had some content already to work with, and it's just so much faster. I think that the ways that I think is so helpful to the ways that it can do that too is that I've given it tons of content. I have all of the chapters that I've drafted so far. I've given it my interview transcripts. I have the conversations with my co-author Katra Welsh in here. I have all of my LinkedIn articles, my live streams, my podcasts as transcripts inside of this thing. So it is packed full of information about the way I think and the way I write. And so it has a really good understanding of who I am. And it also has memory, so it's learning me over time. So I find this to be extremely helpful to have this. So let me just give you a quick tour of some of my custom GPTs. So the first one I just talked about is Bookwise Editor. In this example, I had a bunch of bullets inside of a text, and I'm like, I need to write an introduction, a better one through those 3 bullets. So just give me a quick introduction here. Here's another one. I have a virtual bookkeeper as a solopreneur. I have to do my own bookkeeping. I had been outsourcing it to other people, but I'm like, this is really not that hard. I can do this internally. But every once in a while, I have like a vexing problem between using QuickBooks and Gusto, which is where I use to pay myself. I have to do things like set up a 401 contribution. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I don't want to bother my accountant. I don't want to bother my financial advisors. So I just ask AI, and it's already trained. It knows my parameters and knows how I'm set up as an S corp, and it can just answer the question for me because it is an expert on QuickBooks and Gusto, which are the 2 things I use for my bookkeeping and accounting. So I find this to be super helpful. And of course, I give it to my accountant to check, but he's very happy that I'm doing these things. And my accounting friends are very happy that I'm not calling them in the middle of the night in a panic, like, how do I do this on deadline? I recently created a new custom GPT because I'm trying to up my fashion game, my style game. So I uploaded pictures of all of my favorite wardrobe pieces, and I said, help me create a better wardrobe. What are other things I need to add to it to create a casual wardrobe? And so it gives me a shopping list. So I have that with me. So if I'm out shopping or browsing online, and I love going to consignment stores, I can look at it and I can even take a picture and send it to my fashionista AI and say, would this work well with all my other pieces? Or here are 3 pieces. Which ones do you think I should use? Or this morning I said, hey, help me get dressed. What would you recommend? I'm doing a live stream. I'm going to see a friend. I'm going to be outside. It's San Francisco. It's cold in some places and warm in other places. So it gives me, and I said, give me 3 options. So it gave me 3 options to inspire me because I'm sick of wearing the same thing over and over again. So that's my fashionista GPT. I thought I had another one in here. I may have skipped it. I did skip it. It's okay. It's the I'm out of time anyway. So the other thing I have found to be quite helpful is I do have, for example, I take a lot of supplements. I'm trying to improve my health. I don't want to bother my doctor, so I have a functional medicine advisor that just helps me figure out when I should take my supplements, helps me interpret my labs, just gives me advice that I can go to on a constant basis. I have it following my favorite wellness authors and thought leaders in the space. So it doesn't replace my doctor, but it makes me more informed and more proactive in how I'm looking at my wellness and my longevity so that I'm more equipped when I go talk to my doctor about these issues and I can ask, well, what do I do about this? But when I want to add a new, like I want to increase my calcium, when should I take that? And I was on a 3 time a day routine, and now I'm just on 2 times because I always forget lunchtime, taking those meds. I just don't remember. So I'm like, where should I take this? Should I take it in the morning, in the evening? And it just helps me supplement that routine. So that's what I have for today. And it just again, just be very creative. I encourage you to think about ways you can incorporate AI into helping you just be more productive, but also to live well in your life. So again, and it's also about again just building transparency. Back to my point, and that someone had asked me, "How do you deal with bias?" And Jay was talking about this too. How does our bias toward anthropomorphism create simulacra? I'm not quite sure what that is, but how's our tendency to think of this AI as an animate person, as an object, as something that is sentient? How do you prevent that? And then again, I constantly remind myself, this is a very good intern. It is not a real person. It is something that I can depend on for these tasks, but it is fallible. It is not perfect. It has its own bias. I have my own bias in the way I'm using it. And as I'm using it more and more, the AI is also developing a bias to be a sycophantic to me. And I have to sometimes now say to it, don't use the memory, or I may turn off the memory if it's something I don't want it to remember. But I actually will say, don't remember these things. Look at it from a fresh perspective. So it's difficult sometimes because remember things from chat to chat. And that can be very helpful, but it can also create some bias in the way it's doing the work. All right. That was a turbo tour into my life with AI. Hope you enjoyed that. Next week, I'm going to be talking about AI infrastructure. This is one of the last chapters in the book that we've been working on, and it's finally done. And I wanted to share some of the thinking of it behind how do you create a modular, flexible AI infrastructure? What are the layers that you want to put into it? How do you think about issues like security by design? So we're going to do a deep, deep dive into the AI infrastructure, but we won't get too technical. And I'll give you some questions that you as a business leader can be asking your technical team to help make sure that everyone is on the same page with all of this. So thank you so much for joining. Oh, and thank you, Holly, for adding this. So thank you for following me for 10 years. That's amazing that you've been on this journey. Again, thank you for appreciating these best practices. I hope that you and others on this stream will find this to be helpful. Keep doing this. And by all means, share your best practices with other people. Share them with me because I'm still learning. How are you using AI to help make things better? And one thing I just realized is a good best practice is these custom GPTs. If you have access to them inside of your organization, share them inside of your organization. Prompts are IP, custom GPTs are IP. And the more you can share them and build in public, as I like to say, the better you're going to learn, the better you're going to be at getting and using AI to its fullest potential to maximize your potential. So I hope that you've enjoyed today. I look forward to doing a deeper dive into the technology, but from a business perspective next week. And until then, stay safe, enjoy, and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.